So as someone who has been to a fair few haunted places, I would like to prerequisite that I am personally immensely skeptical of ghosts. I believe there could be something, but I'm way too rational of a person to ever kind of accept it unless there was any evidence behind it. However, in this video, I'm going to be discussing the historical implications of the concept of ghosts and historic and modern methods of communicating with ghosts. So let's get straight into the video. Also, if you guys do enjoy this video, please consider subscribing and let me know what you think down below also. If you want to discuss this more in depth with me, come and check me out on Twitch. The link is also down below in the description. The history of ghosts. All the way back in the 1st century AD, there was a Roman author called Pliny the Younger, who spoke about an old man with a long beard and rattling chains that was haunting his house in Athens. It's definitely an interesting read, however my argument would be that Pliny was an author. He wrote fiction pieces during the 1st century, and this was written in a letter to another Roman author at the time. However, this was widely regarded as the first somewhat credible ghost story, which does seem quite interesting. He ends the letter by addressing the recipient, stating he begs that you will apply learning to this question. So he is evidently asking for some advice as to what he properly experienced from this supposed spirit. The next couple of centuries were relatively tame when it came to the occult and spirits as a whole, until along came 856 AD, and the first sighting of a poltergeist was discovered. The sighting was at a farmhouse in Germany, and reportedly this poltergeist would start fires and throw stones to torment the family that was living at the farmhouse at the time, which is what we would now commonly determine as some form of poltergeist. One of the most frequent ghost sightings came from Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second wife, who was beheaded at the Tower of London in 1536 after being accused of witchcraft, treason, incest, and adultery. There have been countless sightings of Anne Boleyn since 1536, at the Tower of London and at her childhood home, Hever Castle in Kent. And for those Americans out there, America has their own historical icons of ghost sightings, most notably of Benjamin Franklin, who ever since the beginning of the 19th century has been seen near the library of the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia. Also, some people reported that his statue in front of this building would come to life and dance in the street, which is a bit far-fetched. The other icon is Abraham Lincoln, who supposedly haunts the White House, and has made very frequent appearances, supposedly ever since his assassination in April 1865. Abraham Lincoln is said to be visible wandering through the hallways at the old Springfield Capitol, but also he was spotted very frequently during Franklin D. Roosevelt's administration. However, the most famous ghost sightings are different from these. Arguably, the most well-known ghost in the world would have to be Bloody Mary. Not the cocktail, but Bloody Mary is a legendary ghost which was originally conjured to show the future, particularly during the 20th century. Sightings of Bloody Mary would often occur during the game of the same name, or in tradition, she would be seen by a man who was about to die. Bloody Mary is summoned by saying her name 3 times into a mirror, and was originally believed to be malevolent. But this very quickly changed to an evil entity. Bloody Mary is relatively easy to debunk, as you are meant to do the ritual in a dimly lit or pitch black room for a prolonged period of time, which could easily cause hallucinations, and also you're wanting to see something, which once again makes it entirely plausible that the Bloody Mary ritual is just a hallucination. The HMS Queen Mary was a cruise ship built in 1936 for the Cunard White Star Line. It was commissioned as a war liner during the Second World War, and after the war finished, the 81,000-ton ship rested in Long Beach, California. In 1967, the ship was turned into a luxury floating hotel and resort. Since 1967, there have been 50 different ghosts that have been reported in the ship. And John Smith, the ship's final chief engineer, said he would always hear unexplained sounds from the ship's bow. Smith also claimed that he encountered a ghost of Winston Churchill, or at least his spectral cigar smoke, in the Prime Minister's old stateroom on the boat. The other ghost sightings come from the pool room, which was closed off due to the dangers it posed, and also a crew member in blue overalls who would haunt the deck. One of the most haunted locations in the world is New York, which is rife with ghost stories. Let's do this quickly. First of all, you have Peter Stuyvesant, the last Dutch colonial governor of the city, who has been seen stomping around on his wooden leg ever since 1672. You have the author Mark Twain, who wrote The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, who can be seen in his house walking up and down the stairwell. The poet Dylan Thomas can be seen sitting on his usual corner table at the West Village's White Horse Tavern, where he drank 18 shots of scotch, which killed him in 1953. However, the most famous of them all was Aaron Burr. Aaron Burr was the vice president under Thomas Jefferson, but is best known as the person who killed Alexander Hamilton in 1804. He haunts his former carriage house, which is now a restaurant in Barrett Street. My personal experiences. Ghost hunting is a strange thing to do. I've done some ghost hunting with one of my friends within the UK, and he is quite confident there is something out there, whereas I am very rational and will think a lot of strange things through that happen. I once went to an abandoned lab near where I live, which has been decommissioned and destroyed recently, but before it was destroyed, me and my friend went up there early in the morning to try out some ghost hunting. I did a survey of the site, checked no one else was there, and we set up in a room where there was an explosion that killed 80 people in the 90s. We sat there for an hour with a spirit box, an EMF, and a Ouija board, and nothing happened, which shows the reality of this situation, and almost paints a bit of a picture as to some of the stuff that other content creators make. You cannot always get this haunted stuff to happen, which is strange because these content creators always made it seem so simple, which is why we thought we would try it. There was also a massive forest near me that used to be a Roman marching ground and was the site of a massive fight between the Romans and an opposing faction. Both sides suffered massive casualties, and as such the area is now widely considered to be a haunted woods. I went here with one of my friends for a live stream just under a year ago, and there was a point where my stream randomly cut out and I'd lost signal within the forest, which is quite unusual. At this point I heard what sounded like someone dragging an axe through this overgrown forested area. I shined my torch and could not see anything, which was strange. My friend also heard this sound, and we both decided it was more worthwhile to just leave at that point and discuss what was going on. We couldn't quite figure out what it was because we both heard the same sound, and we couldn't rationalize it to being an animal or something else. And this definitely freaked us out a bit, and you can actually see in the stream, well, not anymore because it's not there, but you can see in the stream we do get quite freaked out. However, despite having had quite a few eerie things happen to me that would turn most people into believers of ghosts and hauntings, for me it still never truly sat right with me. I think a lot of things can be rationalized quite a lot when it comes to paranormal activity and sightings, and that is what I want to do in this video. So let's start debunking some paranormal stories and videos. Ghosts caught on camera. Spirits are supposedly captured on cameras. A lot of these ghosts are fake. They're internet hoaxes. They can be quite disturbing to look at though. There is one iconic video that actually made me quite intrigued. Now I remember watching it with my manager once. The video shows two little girls who are sitting on a small child's table. One of the girls can see into what appears to be a small laundry room or hallway, and she is evidently frightened by something. She starts crying and looking into the room while telling to her mum and telling her that she is scared. The girl who cannot see into the laundry room turns around and sees nothing, and starts laughing at her sister for evidently being scared of nothing. Then the first girl stands up and goes over to her mum, still crying. The other girl looks backwards and stops.
Turn around. But you gotta listen to me. Turn around, look at me. What's the matter?
Pure terror overcomes her as she starts screaming, jumps up, and also runs over to her mother. The video is quite big on social media, and the scream of the younger girl who sees whatever is back there, second, is one of pure terror and emotion, and led to a lot of people thinking something had to be back there, because the girl's reaction was so raw. It was so real. However, there is nothing that can be seen on the camera, and the mother also sees nothing. So it's entirely plausible that the first girl was just hallucinating something in the dark. However, the scream from the second girl makes me rethink this perspective. It's so genuine, and the girl starts bawling her eyes out while also running over to her mother. I must have spent about an hour watching this video, trying to think it through, debunk it, and I'm putting it down just to a child's over-imaginative brain, looking into a dark hallway and thinking they're seeing something. But what makes zero sense is the way that the girls are looking into the room, and evidently whatever they are looking at is out of picture frame. It makes no sense that one of the girls is seeing nothing and taking the mick out of her sister, and then literally jumps in fright and runs away crying. However, I would argue this could be entirely rationalized with multiple means. For starters, it is entirely possible the darkness in that room has made a coat or a jacket seem like a figure, which the first girl just did not see until she turned her head slightly more to the left. It's also possible there is someone else playing a prank on them, but this is such a far-fetched rationalization, but let's be honest, and assume that children are not always the most credible evidence that appears in any ghost video, really. There is another video, however, which does involve a little girl, and I would like to discuss this video of an unwanted dinner guest. This video was taken by a boy who thought his little sister was messing with his food when he was not looking, so he tried to catch her in the act, but he catches something much more sinister. In the video, we see a young girl sitting at a table. She cannot be any older than 3 or 4, so she is quite young. The boy goes off pretending to go to the toilet to see his sister messing with his food, which is where things get strange. The sister is definitely messing around with her brother's food, but what makes little sense is when the napkin holding the cutlery suddenly moves in a very peculiar fashion.
Where's going dinner?
Almost as though it has been tugged. What makes this considerably creepier, though, is that it appears the little girl is communicating with something, saying, "That's Billy's food." Which is strange, but this could be as simple as her having an imaginary friend and a really eerie and coincidental breeze moving the napkin. But let's not get stupid about this. It could also be possible that this was just an elaborate hoax in which the brother simply had set up a string to pull the napkin. This is one of those videos that appears almost difficult to debunk because it is credible in terms of evidence, and there's quite clearly an action happening, and therefore, I'm going to say hands down, this is something which I can't debunk. But I did want to show it as some sort of credible evidence. There are some videos that showcase something paranormal which cannot necessarily be debunked, and this is definitely one of those instances. One thing I do want to also discuss, and I'm going to say it briefly as a bit of a PSA, YouTube creators who do ghost hunting videos. I'd like to exemplify to you that these people get paid through watch time and adverts on their videos. And therefore, if they were able to find some kind of a haunted experience or ghost or spirit, the chance of their video going viral would be immense, and therefore their revenue would also be nothing to shy about. It's also why a lot of these videos put really, really creepy music behind them. So take into account when watching these haunted videos, as they could quite clearly be hoaxes or rigged footage to try and get themselves more recognized. If any ghost hunters in the UK want to prove me wrong and tell me of any haunted places or take me on a proper spectral ghost hunt, I guess, feel free to message me on Twitter and we could arrange something. We can try and figure out something to do. Different types of ghost. There are many different types of ghost or spirit that are encountered in these styles of videos as well. The documenters within these videos never really go into detail about the types of entity which they encounter, but it seems to be there are a couple of different types within these videos and these channels. And I'd like to somewhat discuss these without necessarily stating they are real characters within these videos, but there are a couple of particularly well-known ones. Poltergeist. Poltergeist is one of the most common styles of ghost that you will tend to see within these videos. Poltergeist actually translates to noisy ghost, which means that most of the videos involve things like creaking floorboards or moving objects, and therefore these ghosts are most likely to be poltergeists. The poltergeist is also one of the most common types of ghosts within pop culture, even in films that have been made with the same name. Poltergeist phenomena could be quite easily rationalized, particularly things like creaking floorboards and sound being heard as simply environmental coincidences. However, the attribution of poltergeist can also be applied to phenomena, such as fires suddenly breaking out, which is considerably harder to be debunked. But I'm going to simply argue that the frequency of which these things happen means that it doesn't happen. It's such a strange argument that I understand, but I've only ever seen this happen in one video, so I'm going to suggest this is a very rare occurrence with very limited evidence as to its legitimacy. Setting a fire is very, very strange. It's not something that just naturally happens. It is rare, granted that does not mean it isn't true, but it's entirely possible to edit footage to showcase a fire suddenly breaking out. Orbs. Orbs are probably the most photographed types of paranormal activity. Orbs are essentially small balls or orbs of light that appear on cameras. These I can pretty easily debunk as light bouncing off of dust within the air. They can appear both white and blue in videos, but I would argue they're always white. It just comes down to the setup of light sensitivity on the camera. These are pretty simple in the sense that they could be light phenomena, or they could be specks of dust that are appearing within the air. A lot of the abandoned places these people go to that are supposedly quite haunted are normally quite derelict and unmaintained, so I do not think stating that these orbs could easily be air faults is necessarily something to frown upon. Mist. Mist is the term that I'm using for almost spectral figures appearing on camera. The reason I am separating this from poltergeist is because they seem to act differently. The mist is almost a figure that appears on cameras, and can appear in front of people, and even I have seen these kinds of apparitions before. But from what I've seen in the past, these ghosts are just spectral figures that could potentially just be shadows. I went to an abandoned nuclear bunker, and even in a video before actually shown this bunker. I never post abandoned exploration videos twice, as it's a very annoying thing that content creators do, where they milk locations for content and therefore revenue. I went back to this bunker in November 2021, and I took air tanks so we could go deeper into the mine. We went further in and it appeared to be a white figure, just standing, looking at us. We were quite spooked by this, and we walked away after watching for a second or two, and could not quite explain it. I'm very skeptical about mist apparitions that can appear in these videos, and even in the video where I did explore this mine, there was a point where I heard what sounded like something walking towards me. Mist apparitions could be shadows, but they could be other things, and there is no easy way to suggest or debunk which of these it could be. But hoaxes do exist, and therefore they could be hoaxes, but let's not use that as a reason behind this apparition, as that's a bit of a cop-out. Different ghost hunting techniques and methods. There are many different methods of ghost hunting that are regularly conducted on this glorious website we call YouTube. You have much well-known ones such as Ouija boards, and what I will call brute force ghost hunting. But there are also considerably less well-known methods, such as the Estes method, or even if you look into the entire science of demonology, Ouija boards. Okay, so Ouija boards. Ouija boards. Ouija boards are probably the most stupid evidence of ghosts that is out there, as it relies massively on trusting those which you are conducting this paranormal game with. The Ouija boards are so easy to fake when you're trying to scare your friends or act like the big person with a group. Plus, when it actually comes to it, the frequency of which they work is really quite low. I have done Ouija boards before with a friend of mine who I entirely trust, and we get nothing that happens. Which makes it strange that whenever content creators take these to abandoned places, there's always some kind of output from these Ouija boards. Then again, it could be a case of they take these Ouija boards to places, nothing happens, and they cut the footage. But it certainly seems a bit strange. It's like how when the best type of evidence I've always felt for ghost hunting is always live streams. It's why I've live streamed from like abandoned woods and places like that, and there's so many places I want to go where I want to live stream. But it's certainly a strange one because live footage is so much harder to edit. It's very hard to do stuff live. You can still do it, don't get me wrong, it is possible, it's just really, really awkward to do. And therefore, a lot of people just kind of won't bother, normally, I don't think. But yeah, that's kind of the problem I think with Ouija boards. It's so easy to doctor footage and make these child's games, by the way, operate in terms of actually giving you some kind of evidence or some kind of content. Brute force ghost hunting. Brute force ghost hunting is what I am calling generic ghost hunting, such as walking around with a light and a camera. This type of ghost hunting is actually probably more credible than some of the other forms of ghost hunting which are out there, but it could easily be staged ghost hunting, particularly when these influencers are doing this for a living. Brute force can also include using things such as spirit boxes and EMF meters. These simply pick up radio signals and could even be intercepted by walkie-talkies and other things, whereas there is no scientific evidence behind EMF meters actually being a credible tool for the hunting of ghosts. The Estes method. The Estes method is actually quite interesting, and it's one of the types of method that I would really like to actually try one day. The Estes method is actually quite interesting. I'd like to try it one day when I get the chance to go to another haunted or abandoned location, although most of them in the UK are now being demolished after the backlog from the coronavirus pandemic. The Estes method is simple. You use the spirit box, but instead of letting it play out loud, one person is wearing headphones and a blindfold while the spirit box plays through the headphones, and they are unable to hear their partner. The person not wearing the headphones is asking questions, and the other person answers with whatever they hear on the spirit box. It is a very interesting method created by Connor Randall and Carl Pfeiffer, and was originally used at the Stanley Hotel, the same hotel that Stephen King based The Shining off of. The Estes method is named after Estes Park, Colorado. This method is interesting because you are depriving one of the investigators of their two primary senses, sight and sound. This means they cannot see what you are saying, and can also not hear what you are saying. But can this be debunked? Well, in terms of YouTube content creation, yes. Creators are constantly trying this method and getting consistent responses. They are making content for the viewers. That's why they're always getting these responses, and it does come down to just kind of simply that, I would argue. Summary. There is evidence towards both sides of ghosts and their legitimacy. The evidence to suggest they could be legitimate is just as vast as the evidence against, so I would like to hear what you guys think down below. Please do let me know. My perspective is that if ghosts were truly real, you would see ghosts everywhere you went, for the number of people that had died within the history of Earth, and particularly humans on Earth. You can pose the argument about ghosts only occurring in tragic deaths which are filled with emotions. But can this really be considered when you could argue that it seems every ghost that is seen is an old woman wearing a Victorian dress, or a little girl wearing all white, or someone who died in a mine? There seems to be no ghost that became active in like the last 2-3 years, for example, for any ghost that died in like 2020, as an example here. I've only ever once been able to properly try a big ghost hunt, and I'm more than open to trying it if anyone from the UK has the kit and wants to test my rationalizing mindset. Then, as I have previously said, DM me on Twitter, as I'd love to have some evidence to potentially prove me wrong. Thank you everyone who sat through this very different video of mine, and I hope you did enjoy a very different style of video than what I would normally make. If you did, please consider subscribing, and also let me know down below what you're thinking about ghosts after this video. Anyway guys, thank you for watching, I'll catch you all later. Peace out guys.